Justin, how's it going, buddy?
Good, yourself?
I'm doing great, thank you. You're checking in from Canada as well, correct?
Yeah, Ottawa.
Ottawa, excellent. So, from up north, we're all the way down south in Florida.
Yeah.
So it's really great to be able to be connected with people all over the world. And there must be something going on positive in Canada because you guys seem to be pumping out great educators and, people who have real leadership qualities and want to make an impact on the world. And, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here is you're one of those people. Uh, you show that strong leadership. You've got this intensity and you have a real passion for collaborating and trying to get the best out of people. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started as a teacher and, what got you into this career path?
Sure. It's kind of a fun answer in terms of the practical part. I was a football player in college,
Okay.
and after 4 years, had a year of eligibility left.
Hmm.
And each year, the captains and leaders on our team, so to speak, there'd be two or three of them in teachers' college. So
Hmm.
I got to see four versions of that and always looked up to these people. So when the time came to either graduate university and move on to working, I actually got into a master's of psychology,
Hmm.
but it would require switching schools and going into the traditional academia route.
Sure.
So I thought, what the heck, teachers college at that time for us was 1 year, and it
Hmm.
allowed me to play football for another year. So that was the exciting part about my passions at that time. So it was a pretty easy decision. Um, Ever since I can remember, I've always worked with people younger than me or more marginalized than me. I've always appreciated that. So
Hmm.
like when I was in the 6th grade, I volunteered at a daycare.
Hmm.
When I was in the 12th grade, our high school staff went on strike, worked to rule, and wouldn't coach. So in the 12th grade, I was coaching the grade 8 sports,
Okay.
things like that. And so it was kind of a natural thing for me to go that route.
Hmm.
I don't have a big dream story as far as just falling in love with it.
Hmm.
I actually started personal training out of college.
Hmm.
So I was in the fitness industry, enjoyed that, working 50 hours a week, but wanted to go try what I had gotten qualified for.
Right.
So dove right in and haven't really looked back since in terms of the education piece.
That's awesome. And I think that's a lot of people's stories too, where, there's those few educators. They were, kindergarten, I want to be a teacher, 12th grade, I want to be a teacher. And they've always been there. But there are a lot of us who, through things like sports, I was wrestling in high school. And, again, like having those experiences coaching younger kids, you realize maybe I could do that for a profession. And then it just kind of falls into what you do. So it's not always like I've been building on this my whole life, but it does bring people like us in for sure. Uh,
Hmm.
I do want to talk about a couple of your projects because I think the projects you're working on really relate to a lot of what we talk about with mindset. And,
Yeah.
just especially with what's going on in the world today with quarantines and, learning is definitely changing, right?
Hmm.
So I really love these projects you're working on. The first one I'd really like to go over, you have your 8 billion people blog post.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to call it. Just it's an amazing collaboration where you're trying to elevate teachers' voices, just people's voices, right, from all over. Tell me a little bit about what you feel the importance of collaboration.
I appreciate you pulling up that example, and I'll tell you a quick other story.
Hmm.
There's been a number of times where I've thought about taking that project down
Hmm.
because it fogs the kind of the clarity a little bit. Or if
Hmm.
I was to go look into traditional business advice, let's say, people would
Hmm.
say, pick that one lane, and
Hmm.
what the heck is this 8 billion people project thing?
Right.
Also, because I only have so much energy, it's hard to push it or share it too much.
Hmm.
Um, but it's going to stay forever. Why not? And so the background behind it, I mean, the cliche thing of 8 billion people
Hmm.
is that everybody's voice matters, right?
Hmm.
There aren't 8 billion people on the planet, and certainly probably not even 6 billion have access to internet to be able to write a blog post.
Right.
And certainly let's go all the way down to maybe 1,000 that want to participate.
Hmm.
But the reason why I wanted that to be the nickname was to exaggerate the fact that everybody's stories matter.
Hmm.
In business and education, a lot of times I find that people think that they need to keep things to themselves, right?
Yeah.
while a lot of people will post to Twitter or any of the social media platforms a cliche or just regurgitate a post about collaboration, and yet they don't work with anybody else too much, right? So there's a lot of that culture out there. And I just wanted to get the point across that even if I became wildly successful, every person in this world deserves an opportunity to place a blog post on that website forever. And so the idea behind it is that each person can go on and create some piece of content that can live there and share out to the work that they're doing. So for example, you could go on and write something about the academic mindset, and it can link to your website. As big or as small as anyone wants.
Yeah, and I think that it's so important to have people out here like you who are really pushing just the idea of collaboration. And you're right, even if 8 billion people are not going to participate on that, but just showing how valuable people's perspectives are, it really does open up the field a little bit more, where a lot of people do try to do everything in secret or behind closed doors. And there are a lot of businesses struggling. There are a lot of teachers who are struggling. And the more we can get that out in the open and be able to kind of share what's working for us, helping other people out, the better off education is going to be as a field, right?
For sure. And I think everything, right? Like, it's easy in politics, for example, to want to divide. But when we truly are willing to listen to the other side, I think as woo-woo-y as it kind of sounds, it genuinely serves both sides better, right? You can continue to grow and that sort of thing. So that's what it's all about. Yeah.
So then that leads me right into your, I think, what is your big project right now, this JKL 200, right?
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of teachers out there, there are people out there who really try to inspire and encourage their students. You've got to learn new things. You've got to push yourselves. And that might be in school with their academic subjects. It could be out of school with their passions, right? But there aren't many people who are in that leadership role who are saying, well, I can do that too. And let me show you what that looks like. Let me actually go through that process. Let me share, the failures, the successes. Let's be realistic and, go through the whole process. So what inspired you to decide, I'm going to commit myself to 200 hours of learning and I'm going to show this process?
Yeah, so it starts a number of years ago. I would do a lot of entrepreneurship in the schools. I started a nonprofit called MindZ, which stood actually for Mental Illness Needs Different Solutions. The reason we did this was we wanted to give our students an opportunity to learn through doing something like running a nonprofit. So that was fun, and what it taught me was that the learning was just exponential. It created really authentic, lifelong learners. Fast forward a few years where I'm outside of the regular school system, and I'm now working in our care and treatment schools in the city. Okay. In particular, at the time, I'm working with teen moms. So all these teenagers are either pregnant or have babies between 0 and 3. And in those moments, I realize that they're putting so much pressure on themselves when it comes to things like math and language, whereas they have unbelievable skill sets in concrete examples like nail art, photography, web design, clothing design, and special effects makeup was one of the particular ones that stand out, as well as many other things. Anyhow, they never really could tackle the things that people like Brene Brown or Seth Godin preach in terms of vulnerability, growth mindset.
Right.
And I remember I had taught them for 3 years, and I can put something on the whiteboard, I can send them an email or give them an assignment. And I just was driving home one day, and I was like, in football or in anything that I've ever been successful in coaching fitness, how do I unlock the ability for people to actually learn? And it was always by modeling and setting an example. And I was like, I set goals and I have a growth mindset because I've learned to do that. But at my age and experience, it comes natural to me. But I'm not really pushing the vulnerability piece, right? I can say I am by public speaking or something, but that's like 20% vulnerable. So what would be truly vulnerable in the sense of learning is doing something like singing or dancing that I sure as heck don't want to do.
Yep.
But showing people that that's how you speed up the ability to learn. The last thing I'll add about that is specific to the amount of hours, was a lot of people are familiar with Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour theory. But I think that is an overwhelming concept that will keep people from taking up something like art for, it might prevent them from doing it for 10,000 hours, as hilarious as that sounds. But the reason is, it just sounds like this massive mountain to climb. And so I started looking into, well, what do some other kind of gurus in this hours space talk about? Josh Kaufman preaches that in 20 hours, you can make any activity enjoyable. And Tim Ferriss, who's pretty popular, talks 6 to 12 months that you can become top 5% in the world at any craft you choose. You know, given that it's viable, possible. And so in any case, I kind of was thinking that something like 100 hours would go too quick. You know, you do 100 hours of filmmaking in a couple weeks, you're gonna be, wow, that was fast. You will learn for sure, but my opportunity to learn in front of the world and then edit it and showcase it on YouTube, I thought 200 hours would be perfect.
And you're right. It gets very overwhelming, especially for, you know, youth who are kind of thinking, I've got this to do and that to do. I still have to focus on my academics. I still have to get all these other things done. Am I really going to pour 10,000 hours into this one thing? Right. And that can be a preventable step for anybody. I know even for me as a wrestler, the thing they used to drill in our heads, you have to practice a move 10,000 times before you can hit it in a match. And, you know, in my head, I'm like, wait, that's a lot. That's a big number. Right. And, you know, you see a lot of people quit because they're like, I don't want to commit to 10,000 of every single move I want to try. So, you know, it's, you know, you can't be great without first being good. You can't be the expert without first being that learner, right? So it's really important to be able to get people in that process. And I think what you're doing by showing that process is going to be hugely helpful in showing students, hey, you can be a part of this too, right? So again, going back to the idea of these marginalized students that you're working with, that's the population that I tend to work with as well, especially in my teaching and my coaching. And you're right. I think entrepreneurship is huge in empowering them and making them understand that the skills that they've learned are real world skills and they will help them. You know, some of my best students didn't necessarily have the best GPAs, but they went on to be fashion designers or photographers or, you know, something else, and they've become very successful. So when you're talking to marginalized youth and they're looking at a very tough life and their home situation is not ideal, what advice could you give them to take that first step into thinking about entrepreneurship?
I think one of the most important things is that helping them appreciate that it's not really this sort of binary one or two yes or no thing. That looking into your passions and interests is going to bring mental health regardless of if you become Billie Eilish or something, right? Like they look at these celebrities and superstars at the end of their 10,000 hours and they think, well, I can't do that. It's very common with some of the youth that I work with, for example, to want to be rappers, right? And a lot of, you know, other people that they have in their lives just laugh at that idea, whether it's peers or other teachers, coaches, letting them know that it is possible, but that there may be other things that you need to do in terms of career path or things like that, but that we don't have to give up one or the other. So I wrote earlier in the year about the idea of two paths. So I think it starts there because all of these dreams that people think are unrealistic tend to be very realistic. We just don't know to what extent because we don't actually know how passionate they are about the hard aspects of it, the difficult things that come. And I'll show them examples, you know, of Logic, who took every rap album he could find, locked himself in his closet for 6 months and re-recorded all of these artists' music and played it back to himself to hear what it was. I mean, you talk about getting to 10,000 hours pretty quickly. Those are special stories.
That's commitment.
So the kids don't actually know the work that's involved sometimes. I think also looking into clarity for them in terms of what are their strengths.
Yeah.
When I'm in a jail or an addictions facility and I sit down with the youth for the first time,
mm-hmm.
pretty darn close to 100% of the time, if I ask them about their strengths,
mm-hmm.
They're going to say they don't have any.
Yeah.
And second to that, if you even start approaching the idea of dreams, they're just going to almost tune out.
Yeah.
But pretty quickly, by showing them and giving them little bits of confidence on the way, you
mm-hmm.
can get them to that point where they can look into what are their interests, what are their strengths, what dreams do they have, and finally, helping them just pick what that one thing to focus on at the
mm-hmm.
time is, as I call it, at the top of their pyramid. And what I mean
mm-hmm.
by that is that I tell all of them, you need to take care of your own self-care and health first, physical and mental health. Second to that, you've got family.
mm-hmm.
And if you don't, you've got friends. And then on top of that, we've got work and hobby, and sometimes those go together if we're lucky.
Yeah.
So giving them that sort of framework to work within,
mm-hmm.
and then just preaching about and supporting them in terms of growth mindset and
mm-hmm.
these kinds of things.
Yeah, and growth mindset, that's something, it can be so difficult for some students. You start talking about it and they say, well, that's not really what I'm experiencing. That's not what I'm
And
feeling.
adults.
Yeah, and adults, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, once you really dive in and you do start talking about things like strengths, taking that asset-based approach where a lot of students haven't really even considered about their strengths because all they focus on is this F they got or, you know, a bad class that they didn't really enjoy or something like that. So being able to pull from their strengths, I mean, when we think about what we do in business and in life, we usually gravitate around our strengths, right? We don't gravitate around, I'm going to get a job doing the thing I'm weakest at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we
sure.
focus towards the things that we're strong at. So it's really important to help students, you know, focus on that aspect of your life. Like, hey, what are you strong at? Where is your skill set? Because you do have one.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but do you have any last advice, maybe something you pulled from your life as a football player that you brought into your education career that has helped you have that growth mindset?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I wrote about that on the Super Bowl. And I don't remember the specifics of it. But I think the most important thing is realizing that you need to be resilient in any big, exciting dream or goal you have. People look at someone, you know, holding a trophy in a sport like football and just, again, see the upside, see the celebrations, right? Or see that the fans are cheering and all these kinds of things. And they don't appreciate that, you know, maybe twice a week you're jogging up to the field extremely sore thinking, why the hell am I doing this? Or after a game, you know, you feel like you've been in a car accident for a few days. Fast forward a week, you want to do it again. And it's about understanding that true big goals do have those ups and downs. One question I get often from people is, I had these dreams and goals, but I always give up after a certain period of time. And I think that it's important to appreciate that it may not be what you actually want to do. So you need that life audit, and sometimes coaching can help with that. So try something else. And that's why I laugh about my handle, but that's why I use that, right? That's all you can do is just try the next thing.
Right.
And you'll know when you get it. I truly think that, because a short example is I was walking with my daughters today and thinking about this interview we were going to do and how, you know, I've slowly built, I don't know what you want to call it, traction in terms of being able to have impact with these ideas in social media and website, whatever. But a tear came to my eye when I was thinking of the fact that it's going to be successful. And I don't care if it takes 20 days or 20 years. And I think when you find the thing that you feel that about, even when it's hard, you know that it doesn't matter how long it takes. You don't need a timeline because you enjoy the process. That's when you know you've found what you want to be doing.
Yeah, that's huge. That's passion.
Yeah, and I think it's okay, again, for it to change, right? Like, I gave up football because I lost that passion for it, you know? And that's okay, too. I think the most important thing, especially in a time like right now, is just not putting too much pressure on ourselves.
Right. Yeah, no pressure, just keep trying, right?
For sure.
Keep trying. this passion doesn't work out, let's find another one, and let's just keep growing and keep learning.
Yeah, I heard Mark Cuban say that a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, like you brought up the 8 billion people. With my handle, a lot of times, you think, I don't know, it's kind of hokey. But then I'm like, no, it's permanent now because it truly speaks to that message.
Yeah.
And that's what's most important. I don't care about the details.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think you're having a great influence on people. I appreciate what you're doing. And I really thank you for your time. I had a lot of fun talking to you today. This was great advice. I think it's really useful, especially for our youth that's kind of trapped in their homes right now. So keep doing what you're doing. Thank you again. Appreciate you. Have a great day, Justin.
Thank you very much. You too. Look forward to all your other episodes.
Appreciate it.
Take care.